This has been a long time coming. I've thought about answering this cringe question, and it's not because the question is cringe, it's because the answers are absolutely cringe. We're going to talk about whether or not right now is a good time to buy. And as you can see where this is going, the answer is obviously yes, and I'm kidding. It's not. The answer is a lot more nuanced than yes. But we're going to get into some personal stuff. I'll give you some personal examples of my own life. We're going to talk about some atrocious, heinous basement renovations, how I lived paycheck to paycheck, how I made it happen, and whether or not you should too, because you probably shouldn't. But anyway, let's get into it. My name is Vas. I'm a real estate broker right here in the city of Toronto, where I help people navigate the dynamic nature of our real estate market. So the first type of person we're going to talk about that asks this question the most, probably 99% of people that ask this, first-time home buyers, and I feel for them. Listen, buying a home right now is definitely a lot more difficult than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, forget about 20 years ago. So it's daunting task. The questions keeps getting asked and the answers are always the same. So I hope you find some value in this. I will give you my framework, how I thought about it, because when I bought my first property, I too asked the same question. I didn't get an answer that made sense to me. And now looking back, I think I figured it out, but you be the judge of that. So first of all, for first-time home buyers, is this a good time to buy? So let's just park that for a second. Let's talk about, should you buy? That's the first question. How do you think about it? How do you know if you're ready to buy? Well, I will explain that with an anecdote, my own anecdote of how I thought about buying my first property. Caveat, I don't know if this is for everybody, but hear me out, and then maybe I think it will make sense to you. I know it makes sense to a lot of people. I've told this example, so here, you be the judge. Should you buy a property? The entire question will be based on where you are with your earning potential. So what do I mean by this? I'll give you an example. When I graduated university with an accounting degree, I worked for 2 to 3 years. I got my accounting designation. I made X amount of money. However, I knew that, 3 to 5 years from there, I would be making at least double what I was making then, just based on natural career progression. So I didn't want to wait another 3-4 years until I'm making double the money. I wanted to buy a property right now because I saw everything kept going up. So I just wanted to get in. And that's what I did. I went in, I got a mortgage. I couldn't qualify for the mortgage amount I needed to buy the property I wanted. I had to get a co-signer. And then I'll tell you what else I had to do, the sacrifices that had to be made. But basically, in my mind, I decided I'm going to go all out, completely back to the wall. I'm doing this. Even though I can't afford it, my debt service ratios were absolute garbage. Like, you want to talk about living paycheck to paycheck? That was me. All savings, everything was drained to do this. But the entire reason, even for somebody that's conservative like me, I was okay with it is because I knew I was early on in my career and I knew I had a lot more money to make based on just normal career progression of an accountant. You started, call it 45, 50, whatever it was back in the day. Then you make 70, 80, then you make 120, then you make 150, then you can make 200, then you go to 50. It just depends how far you want to push, right? And your abilities. But 2 to 3 years out of school, you kind of understand your abilities. You can make that judgment call, ask friends, ask for feedback. So that's how I saw it. So I'm like, you know what? I'll be stretched for 2 to 3 years. I don't care because I know eventually this mortgage is going to be, it's going to be immaterial in the grand scheme of things. But let me tell you, when I first bought this property, it was definitely not immaterial. I was absolutely broke. I did the worst basement renovation so that I can make my basement apartment into a rental. It was already kind of set up like that, but I had to add a kitchen. I had to add a washroom, shower. And I went to Habitat for Humanity, the restore place where you have all the junk that people don't want. And I renovated the entire basement with all that stuff. I learned a lot. I rented it to a friend of mine who lived with me for 2 years and helped me pay half of my mortgage, which was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you, Frank. So that's what I did. But again, the entire mentality was always based on where will I be income wise in the future? Because look, if I knew that I wasn't going to get raises or my job didn't have the income potential that it did, I probably wouldn't have done that. I'll be totally honest with you. If I was, halfway through my career or, my pay band or whatever my education level was, and I was at the top of it and I wanted a property and I couldn't qualify for it, I absolutely would not have done what I had done. So that's kind of how you should think about it. If you're halfway through your career or if you're in a career where you would be stretched buying a property right now and there's no potential for decent income increases in the future, I think that kind of answers your question. You either go for a cheaper property, if such thing is even possible for you to do, or you just accept that maybe home ownership is not in the cards unless you make some big sacrifices. Obviously, you rent out a basement, you rent half the house, whatever the case may be. And then obviously option number 3 is career change. Maybe look for a way to make more money. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that because that is not what this is about. This is how do you think about whether or not it's a good time to buy. And for first-time home buyers, I always start with where are you in your income potential? What does your future income look like? And if you're comfortable and confident in your abilities, then go ahead, start looking. Now, when it comes down to the actual tactics, right? Let's say we're tacticians. When is the best time to buy during a normal market? So between January and December. If you look at my prior videos, you know seasonally, prices are the cheapest in the winter and in the summer. And in fact, if it was me and based on my experience, I have seen the absolute best deals happen in the winter. So December, January, that's the sweet spot for me personally. I absolutely love it. Nobody's out. Obviously, the last few years have been different. People are, the market has been so different. So it's very difficult to tell if this winter is going to be slow or not, but it's still pretty slow. And then the summer, August, very slow. So in terms of tactics, if you have the income potential, if you have a stable job, if your holding period for this property is 5 to 10 years, then go for it. And then look for something in the winter or in the summer. So those are the best times to buy if you're a first-time home buyer. Now, let's get into the people with a lot less risk, and that is the upsizers and the downsizers. So now, if you're an upsizer or a downsizer, you're basically a seasoned vet, right? You know what you're doing, you've maybe bought or sold a couple of properties. It's not that big of a deal. So is there a good time to upsize or downsize? Yes, there definitely is, but your risk is hedged because you're selling one property, buying another one. As long as it's happening in a short period of time in the exact same market condition, I feel like it's immaterial, but maybe it's immaterial for me, material for other people in terms of how drastic the changes. So first of all, let's talk about upsizing. When is the best time to upsize? So coincidentally, just happens to be that right now, when we're in a buyer's market, in my opinion, this is the best time for upsizers. And unfortunately, right now is not the ideal time for downsizers. But let's talk about upsizers. Why is it a good time to upsize in a buyer's market? Well, very simple. Let's assume Sally has a condo and it's $500,000 and she wants to move into a $1 million bungalow or whatever the case may be. So the spread is $500,000 currently today. This is in a buyer's market. So the spread's $500,000. This is the difference she's working with between both properties if she's to sell and then sell for $500,000, buy for $1 million. Here's what happens in a market it's a seller's market. So effectively, when you have a bunch of buyers and everybody's competing, the typical stuff we see a lot of times. So in an up market, let's say median prices go up 10%. So let's say that same bungalow or whatever it was for $1 million becomes 1.1 million. And then the condo also goes up because everything goes up, let's assume at the same pace, becomes from 500,000, becomes 550,000. Now the spread went from 500,000 to 550,000. So Sally's cost to upsize actually just went up when it became a seller's market. Sure, she got more money for her condo, but she's paying also a lot more for that bungalow or townhouse. So that's why, as you can see, in a down market, when prices go from 1.1 to 1 and the condo went from 550 to 500, the spread is now 500,000. It's much better time for her to upsize. Obviously, I'm making a lot of assumptions that, condos and detached, they're moving in the exact same percentages. A lot of times they're not, but you get the idea. This is for illustration purposes only, but ultimately that is kind of how it works in real life as well. Downsizers. So the downsizers that walked away with bags of money are the ones that did it during COVID. And this is where a lot of downsizer clients right now struggle with because they're still thinking about peak COVID pricing. And I don't think we're going to see that peak COVID pricing for a while. So I think we got to just kind of push it to the side. Remember, even today's prices are a lot higher than they should be had COVID not happened. So for example, if prices go up on average 8% or 9% per year, had COVID not happened and prices were going up by 8 or 9% per year, right now, today, we're still higher than where it would have been had COVID not happened. So downsizers are struggling with this. They still want the peak pricing, but they're still getting great pricing. So anyway, right now is not ideal for downsizers because guess what? The spread between the property that they're selling and that they're going to has become smaller, so they're not going to cash out as much money. Now, the interesting thing with downsizers is a lot of them that are downsizing for lifestyle reasons, For them, it's more important to get the right property to downsize into than actually squeeze out every single penny out of the property, because they're at this point in their life where they're thinking about something completely different than somebody that's upsizing or a first-time home buyer. In a seller's market, upsizers win. In today's market, which is a buyer's market, upsizers, it's not optimal, but again, it will come down to lifestyle choices. And I feel most downsizers don't really care that much to optimize. They're more concerned with the next phase of their life and getting something that they will be very happy with. So that is my take on, is this a good time to buy? Now you know it for first-time home buyers, upsizers, and downsizers. I hope you found this useful, and I'll see you in the next one.